let's go to Telos. People would like to know about Telos.
Well, you part of me, and the only hesitation is to tell the story completely so that people will understand it. But in the interest of time, I'm going to accelerate and not necessarily help you understand what led me to the day that was. It was not my intention to visit Telos. It wasn't my intention to commune with the Lemurians. Now, by the time that day took place, I had been in the Shasta area for 4 weeks. And when I first got there at the beginning, my intent was to stay for a week and maybe two. And I just found some groove. I didn't want to leave. And it didn't matter. I could just sit on the mountain. I didn't have to see anybody, talk to anybody. I didn't have to do anything. I could just be. And man, it was like I got in touch with something that just felt like I was supposed to be there. The longer I was there, the longer I just enjoyed it. And so it would take me a couple of years to really think about that whole instance and put it into perspective and think that when I got there, my vibration was elevated, not to the degree that I would say by the end of the month, but over the time I spent on the mountain, now I can understand how my vibration rose every day I was there on the mountain. So by the time I was invited to move through a portal and visit the Lemurians, I matched their vibration. In my mind, that's kind of how things planned out. So to cut to the day that this happened, so I can tell you what happened in Telos that day. I had gotten to this, it's a popular spot on the mountain. It was a Sunday morning when I went. So there's some, because of its popularity, there can be limited parking. There are couples, small families that are there hiking already. It's a little bit before noon by the time I get there. And when I do find a parking space, which I'm kind of surprised by. Lots of people going in different directions. But the day before, Friday before that, so this is Sunday, I had come up here to kind of plan what I was going to do for the rest of the weekend. There were a few places that I had not been here yet. And I got to tell you that during that month I was in Mount Shasta, I rarely went to the same place twice. There was so much to take in and so many water sources that were beautiful that you didn't have to go to the same place twice. You'll find your favorites, and later you will return to those. But there's magic everywhere. And each year I return, it just seemed like the energetic level of these places got more elevated so that they just became easier and easier to find. In my mind, that's happening organically, and not just for me, that when the time comes when people need to find these predisposed areas to higher energies and higher vibrations, it's going to be easier for them to find them when the time comes. So this day that I got there, I had seen some areas that Friday when I was looking at noon back at the mountains. The sun had hit it in such a way that it looked like these things could possibly be cave openings. And so it didn't look like it was that far for me to hike from here over to there, maybe 35, 40 minutes. Some of it was going to be off trail, and I was willing to do that. So Saturday, I'd filled my day with another hike, and I was going to come back Sunday. There was something after my hike on Saturday. I almost did not return on Sunday. At the end of this hike on Saturday, which was to another peak right next to Shasta called Black Butte, it's about 6,900 feet to the peak. And you can go all the way to the peak, but there's no trail. This is called slag rock, and it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step sliding back because the rock is slippery. And I shouldn't have hiked it alone. Anyway, to make a long story short, when that day was over, I finally found a day after hiking. I was fatigued. and thought, I'll just take tomorrow and rest and regroup and come back later. Well, the next day I got up in the morning and apparently I had recovered enough because by 9 o'clock, my guides are saying, get your clothes on, get your ass out of bed and go back up there. And so I did. When I got to the trail that was going to lead me to the area I wanted to go, I could start to see these places that look almost like elementals had designed this place, because you'd see a tree with these rocks almost circling it that was not intentionally placed by any human being. So it wouldn't be until the next year when I would come back that I would also recognize that there was a lot of green surface growth around these areas where there wasn't before either. And once I remembered that this part of the mountain is called Avalanche Gulch, because in the early 90s, there was a freaking avalanche that took out everything in its path, trees, moved stones down the mountain quite a ways. So this was just like new growth, but it didn't make any sense. How could these things be placed here? The point was every one of them was energetic. And as I approached them, you just felt something that you didn't see, hear, feel, touch, taste. You just felt it. And when you got there, there's something here that just feels good. And so the first place I found, it's my kind of inclination. I believe as a light worker, it's my job to plant my light. And so when I find these energetic places, here's where I make my connections to this spot, and I leave part of my aura behind. So I was beginning that process here. And then I saw another area look similar, but a little higher elevated. So I wanted to move over there. And as I moved up to this place, I saw one more place right against the mountain where there were these 3 boulders that came out. And as I got up, I could see that this place formed a little area you could actually get up into and sit in. So I crawled over one of the rocks. I looked back in the direction I came from. So off in the distance, I can see the parking lot and I can see people like little ants over there. I'm sure nobody can see where I am. Maybe if they looked in my direction, they'd be able to see. Anyway, planted my light, and then I sat down. So now I know there's no way anybody's going to know I'm here, and there's no need for them to know. I had some grapes and I had some water, and I was listening to music in my earpods. My phone was in my back pocket like it always is. And when I finished with the water and I finished with the grapes, I put them back in my backpack, and then the music stopped. So I leaned forward because I had been leaning up against the brush on the mountain. And when I leaned forward to get my phone out and pulled it up to look at it, there's no power. And now I feel a breeze from behind me. Now, how is there a breeze? So when I turn around, there's a hole. Where I was sitting, whatever I was leaning against, there's now a hole it's rounded out and at least a foot taller than I am. So as I stand up to take a look at it, I can see that there's like a little piece of this that elevates and then goes down. Later, I'll figure out this is a former lava tube. And as the light begins to adjust, it looks like there's somebody down there. And as soon as I had that thought, someone said, "Do you wish to see Telos?" Got a little charge in my system, but yes, I said before.
Can I just jump into it? Did you hear it with your mind, or did you hear it in words?
I thought I heard it with words. There's a discussion to be had for it because what I was going to understand that day was going to come at me in English language. But they speak vibration, and that's very important for them. It's more important for us to begin to understand that, but they had a message to communicate. So they were going to do it in a fashion that I would be able to understand and, take away with me. It looked like it was an adult-sized, and I assume by the voice it was male. And I thought it was somebody approximately my size. I'm 6 feet tall. I thought it's about my size. Well, as I started to get closer and the light adjusted to the conditions inside, this person was a lot taller than I was, at least a head taller than I was. And he was wearing this white gown, had long blonde hair. He looked very Scandinavian to me. About half of my heritage is Swedish, so these people look like me. But his features were flawless. When somebody asked me what did they look like, that's the first word that came into mind, is their complexion looked flawless. Now, I wouldn't equate until later why that would be. They're not carbon forms. These are light beings. And this is the avatar that they chose. So I don't know whether they occupy it for 100 years, 1,000 years, 10, I don't know. I'll understand that when I get to the next level, but they're not of this form. There is still the fourth and fifth dimensional are still physical realms on Earth. We get to have physical experiences where once we reach sixth and seventh dimensional levels, we're light forms. We can take physical forms, but we really don't choose to do that anymore. So there's still physicality that's about to be played out on New Earth as well. We just get to do it in a new wrapper. But before we wander off into Earth history, let's finish this story today. So when I got close enough to see and hear him, he said, you can call me Alex. And I said, well, that'll be easy to remember. That's my son's name. And he said, yeah, we know your son. Follow me. And so as we made our way down this incline, he started to explain the nature of the levels there in Telos. He was explaining the nature of the king and queen and their role. He explained the nature of the council and their role. And as that was going on, we got closer down to the bottom of this incline, wherever we were going. And there was light coming from the other end as we made our way down. Well, when we got closer to where the lights started to get brighter, I looked behind me to see where we came from, and there was nothing but darkness. Now, I wouldn't understand any of that until months later, too, where I finally realized, Lowell, here you finally went through a portal. Yeah. They opened it so you could come through. They closed it when you got here. And at the end of this, they're going to return you to the same place, and you won't remember how you got there. But all of it played out exactly like that.
Wow.
So as we got to the bottom of this place and it opened up, I called it a staging area. It had other holes to explore straight across from us. There were 5 other of these holes. And what I saw when we came in, looked immediately to my left, and there was this craft. I don't know what to call it. It's about 6 by 6. It looked like it had 2 kind of like bucket seats on it. No console, just this. There was another one similar off to our left a little bit further, and there was another one over here on the right. Well, while I was taking all this in, Alex had made his way and sat in the opposite seat from the side I was sitting on, pointed to the other seat and indicated for me to sit down. And as soon as I got on this thing and my butt hit the seat, this thing started to levitate and off we went.
Wow.
Now, we headed through one of these lava tubes, and what I'm trying to sense immediately is the human part of me is waiting to feel the breeze as we move through things, right? Yeah, there wasn't any.
No.
I could not feel any sensation of any wind going by me, but I know that we're moving. As we get to the other end of whatever this is, now I can see another light coming from the other side. But as we're getting closer, you can start to see that this lava tube I'm in is got crystals embedded in the walls. And every inch you take changes the light refraction, and you feel like you're in a kaleidoscope. Well, I didn't want it to end because it was amazing. And then all of a sudden, when you reach where we're headed, we're on the first level of Telos. And this hovercraft, for lack of a better word, Alex takes it up so that we're looking at, you've seen cityscape photographs of cities. Well, that's what I'm seeing here. The city is circular in orientation. It's got a huge white pyramid in the middle of it, and all the rest of these buildings, outcroppings, are all crystalline in fashion. It's lit like daylight, but when I look up to try and see sunlight or even see the ceiling to this thing, I can't make it out. I can't tell you how high it is because I can't see it, but this place is lit up like daylight, and I don't know where it's coming from. There were no, upon thinking about it later, none of the buildings cast any shadows. None of the people I saw cast any shadows. So how is this place lit the way that it is? Well, I'll understand the crystal technology that they use later and how they can imbue this thing to hold it and make it into like a little mini star that lasts for 500,000 years before it can no longer hold that charge anymore. And then the crystals just, it's term of service. That's the technology they use here.
Wow.
As we came down from this perspective, because we were moving on to another level, I started to see other Lemurians in little groups. There were 2 over here, there were 3 over there. And when we got close enough for me to make eye contact, like with 5 or 6 of them, just as I was passing by, when I looked at their face, it was like I knew them. And more importantly, they knew me. So the next place we find ourselves, we're on the 3rd level. He's described what the other 5 levels are. And, later, if you want to go into greater detail, we can talk about what's on each level of Telos. I refer to most of the ones I had my own experiences with. I'd love to tell you what's on the 2nd and 4th and 5th levels, and I can. I did not visit those. So I just want to make it clear that I'm speaking from things and resources that I didn't actually get to experience myself, but this I did. And on the 3rd level is where they have their hydroponic gardens. There's also more hydroponic gardens on the 4th level as well that kind of shares space with some more like parks and that type of flora, fauna, lots of stuff that used to be on the surface and no longer is. Some things that have never been on the surface, but one day will be again. And not just things that we want to reintroduce to the surface. Imagine the days when we get to go to those levels, because we vibrate at the same levels. We get to go to level 5 and see animals that some we've seen in the past and some we have not. All benevolent and all just waiting for our vibration to match theirs so that we can reintegrate with all this that's been waiting. When I see the technology they use for perpetuating these crops so quickly, it still was amazing to me. He claimed we were looking at like 7 acres of it from our perspective. And I'm still trying to equate how in the world does that feed all of your population? Because the way that I understand it today is that upon the time that Lemuria sunk, preparations had been made in Shasta for 2 million, and only 25,000 made it. It just went so quickly. Now, I also understand that between then and now, you have grown from 25,000 to 1.2 million Lemurians that resided in Telos. And since then, as of the last count last summer, in one form or another, there are 4.8 million Lemurians here on the planet to assist with this process. Some of that could be you and I in these incarnations, but there's a lot more of them there. So anyway, my point is, I was trying to figure out, how does this feed all these people? Multiple meals a day, how does it do that? And he kind of laughed. And he said, we no longer have carbon forms. We don't eat because our bodies require it. We eat because we like to eat.
Do you think he understands you, that they are a little bit familiar with the 3D bodies and the world and way of thinking, that they kind of laugh and at
they've been monitoring us this entire time. They know exactly what's going on. And there are things that amuse them. There are things that disappoint them, but they understand what we're going through. And as much as they love, and they're there for us, they're waiting to see when humanity is really going to step up. They're here to help that too. They're not going to step back and let us dilute their consciousness. That's probably a good way to put it.
I have a question. I forgot. It was to do with the let's see, carry on, because I had two questions and I forgot. Let me just think, Lowell.
Sure.
It was amazing. It was at the tip of my tongue. Yeah, I would like to know, and I so much would like to know whether you think that you feel that they are monitoring you in a good way and are aware of what you're doing, how you feel, who you interact with, how you spread your word, what the people around you are doing. Do you think they are aware of that, and maybe perhaps even of our conversation, and perhaps even of the listeners?
100%. And here, let me put that into perspective. Our little 3D minds are not prepared and not capable of holding the thought forms that they can have. They're just way beyond that. And so they no longer measure things in the way that we 3D measure them. They see them. They watch us label things. They've certainly watched all these things that are happening during these catastrophic phases here. Humanity, in some regards, hasn't changed one bit, but they're watching the awakening of everybody else going on because they knew that cosmically this was going to happen. So let me get back to Telos, because here's where I get to connect why I was there. When we left the third level and we came back up to the first level, we went to a building that I had noticed when we first came in, because it was kind of cylindrical, circular, crystal. This is the council chambers. And when you see it, it's formed by these crystal panels that form it into a circle. And so the entrance is a wide open space, equivalent to what I would call like French doors. No doors there, but on the panels on either side, there were etchings that I recognized. Well, I thought I had at the time. Over time, I'll realize where I saw them before. There is a shop in Mount Shasta called Blue Star Child Gallery, run by a wonderful little Japanese artist, and she's got all kinds of other gifts too. She had been guided to illustrate these codes, light codes, in graphic form. Now, when you see them, the paper that she puts them on is 10 feet tall, 3 feet wide. She draws them on the floor. They take months to do, but she doesn't use a straight edge or any kind of curvature tools. And when it's done, this thing is perfectly symmetrical on this side to this side. Blows me away. Then she'll go back and color it in, and they just strike you in the heart when you see them. In her shop, she had a few of these in the front room, and she's got 3 rooms in her space, the last one being what I assume was a former office in this retail space. But she keeps that out at the front desk. So in the back, she has 5 of those codes back there and a little pillow for you to sit in the middle of this room and just take it in. So the day that I found those, I asked if I could go out. I went out to ask her, it was in the morning, if I could sit in there and meditate for a while. And she said, that's what it's for. I thought I would be in there for 10 minutes because I didn't really want to interfere with anybody else. But I came out like 20 or 25 minutes later, and I was in tears. Whatever had exchanged there just felt so wonderful that I knew I got something there and I was going to carry it with me. But more importantly, the 2 codes that I saw leaving, the one to the left-hand side of the door coming in and out of this room, and the one on the right-hand side of the door going out of this room, were exactly the ones I saw on this side and that side of the council that had been ingrained here. And when I saw that, I remarked, these look familiar. And that's when Alex said, oh yeah, that's Haruko's work. They're accurate. And that's why we encoded them here. So then we stepped into this space, and you see It's got one big round table in the middle of it, and it's the only wood I've seen anywhere so far. Got 13 chairs around it. This is the council chambers. But what I sense when I get into this space isn't the decorations, oh, you can't miss them. It's a feeling that you get. The only way I keep explaining this is think of the best hug you've ever had and what that felt like when it just that energy charged through you. You got that sensation moving in your room, except it felt like a compression in your heart the whole time you were here. It's just a hug. To me, it was like, okay, if we're going to have a meeting in here, here's how you soften everybody up before the meeting begins. It just felt lovely. So while I was adjusting to this energy, I could see 5 more people entering. It looked like one, the masculine in the middle. If I was to give him a name, it was as close to these Adama illustrations as I've seen. And then there are 2 females flanking him on each side. When he came into the space, they offered me a spot around the table. 3 of them went on this side, 3 of them sat on that side. And now I'm going to understand what I'm doing here. They begin by introducing themselves and telling me a little bit about what they do. It doesn't take very long. And I will remember Adama's name. I will remember Alex. And I will remember the first woman, Shyama, who spoke, because from that point on, she was the one who conducted this meeting. I don't know what position she held, but these were all people that were part of the council. She began to illustrate the reasons why this exchange was going to start to take place. And I got a sense that I didn't think I was going to be the only one. I'm only the only one here today, but I don't think I'm the only one that's going through this process. They were sharing with me that they believe that this shift that we're sensing was also imminent. So this was in July of 2020. Everything that I had read before I knew who the Lemurians were, before I know where Telos was, had led me up to that place that said somewhere around the winter solstice in 2020 was when this energetic thing was about to kick off. So I felt that. When they said the same thing, I thought, oh, wow, was I really onto something here? Maybe it was right. So I just felt like I was in tune with everything else that was going on in the universe. And here were these higher beings who confirmed it. They would go on to say that I was chosen because, first of all, she said, we realize you can hold 5th dimensional awareness. Now, when she said that, I thought, well, sure, I can. I understand the difference between that. And between that time in Telos and now, I understand holding 2 separate views and perspectives. And when I heard that and I thought I could hold it, I really didn't understand what that meant. But she's right. And there is a gift that once you start to activate your DNA and you start to see things from this higher perspective, you can't ignore it. It's not that you ignore the 3D reflex we have, but now you have a perspective. Here's where we are. Here's where we're going. So the whole idea of dual timelines playing out, now this makes sense to me now because I'm playing this out myself. And I've heard from other people that are playing it out too. So I know I'm not the only one. The second reason, she said, we heard that you were the protector of Gaia. Now, I don't go around saying I'm that. And the only reference I have to that phrase was in 2018, I had an opportunity to reach out and find source through an ayahuasca journey, and I took advantage of it. And in that journey, Mother Ayahuasca told me I was the protector of Gaia. Where was that going to come up down the road? And what did it mean? And then the third was during this period that there were Lemurians whose intent was to assist in this transition process. And that when the time came, they hoped that I would act as an emissary and that I would be one of others. So they waited for my response and I kind of stammered. And at first you think about how humbling this is, first of all, how amazing all of this is going on. And so when these beings have asked me to do something, you just kind of stammer, well, I'd be honored to do it. And that was it. The meeting was over. They got their answer. They got up, they bowed in my direction, and off they went. And Alex and I make our way back to the hovercraft. So back we go to the staging
Can I
area.
just stop you in there? How, if you go back to that moment when you agreed and it was your honor, how did you catch any of their feelings, expressions, how they felt about it?
No, and that's where, when I want to underscore how much they appreciate humanity and the reasons why they do, they've just grown to a level in their consciousness where their emotions really don't come into play anymore, because everything is love, unity, compassion. There's no frame of reference that they have to come back to and reground themselves to like we do. So they're anxious to see, here, let's take these little human beings with these raw emotions and share them with our technology and watch what they can do with it now. Because they can take it to levels that we can't, because our emotions have been pretty much neutralized. You know what I mean? By the process of their level of consciousness, they're not affected by that.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what humans are here to do.
Yeah. And it's true that some of us feel that it's not that we are not emotional, but we tend to have fear of those negative emotions, those reactions. So in a way, we kind of are more balanced, neutral.
Yeah, there was a whole lot of conditioning that went into that awareness for all of us, whether we got it from home, church, school, friends. You know, we've been conditioned over this 3D experiment on things that we should be afraid of. And until you can really get past that, here's the trouble I see with, well, there's two things that I wish for everybody. That, as I explained earlier, the first time you start to have these multidimensional experiences, I can promise you they're going to be unsettling because you just hadn't had it before. If you get hung up there, I can see where you're going to be stuck. You really have to just allow yourself to be open to things you've never experienced before, because that's exactly what this is. And if you get shut down and freaked out by to begin with, it's disappointing for me in that I sense, in order for you to have had any awareness of this at all, you already vibrate at that level. And so when you neglect, in my mind, to take advantage of that because you got scared, you've locked yourself up from your own opportunities. And I can't get you out of that. Everybody else is too. But I think now that others are showing up and hearing other people's stories, maybe it's time for them to unlock those experiences that they've had before and lock them away because they were either ridiculed or it just didn't feel right. But now when they hear others saying it, maybe this isn't so taboo anymore.
Yes. Yes, that's right. Um, yes, people actually would like to know how, because I know I talk to them so much, they would like to understand if, I mean, some people already know they are vibrating at the right level. They do not ask questions, but some still would like to know whether they are actually going with the flow. I think those are, and they get the bravery, because their life had been built up with being bold and brave, just in order to open up to these things. So there have been people who have been asking, how do I know that I'm, on the right path to go up with the earth? And I really want to be part of the ascension. So I think you just answered the questions that these people already are. They just are still stuck with these little 3D mindsets.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that we need to heal ourselves. But we can't do that until somebody comes along and helps us by kind of holding up a mirror. And that's my job. Over the last few years, when I pay too much attention to what's going on around me, and I just see I don't want to deal with this anymore, I've said, look, if I can ascend, take me now. And I was reminded that was not the deal you made, Lowell. You said that if we provide you with some of the gifts that you've got already, that you will be willing to help others transition and share it with them. So you're kind of stuck here for now, but I did that by choice. My juice, Helena, comes from when I get to talk with somebody that needed a vessel to open up with, and all of a sudden their head goes, and oh my God, now I get it. That's what I live for. You got it on your own. You didn't get it from me. I might have helped guide your thinking in a way there, but I'm an observer. I'm not here to judge. I'm here to kind of get a feeling for who you are, and only the best empaths can do that, because we tend to be able to see and connect with wherever you are, but not see it from a judgmental perspective. And to that end, I'm not going to share what I think I see until you ask me to do that. You're a sovereign being with free will, and I'm not getting in the way of your journey, because I'm just as invested into seeing whatever you're going to master, because that's your contribution to the rest of us in the tribe. We want you to grow up to whoever you are, and we knew it was going to be crappy for all of us, because those duality lessons had good pieces and bad pieces, so we would understand the context. So thank you for all the contributions you put out there. Every time we just remember we're connected to everybody else, we begin to feel that energy and bring it in. And when we do, that's all we attract. The people we talk to vibrate at that level. The things we read, watch, all vibrate at that level. So if you're listening to this, I can tell you, you are interested in this topic, so you're invested.
You are there. You're on the path. You are part of the,
Yes,
I say, the troop, the tribe, let's say.
yes, yeah. And that's the good news, is that there's others of us. And
Yes.
now we're all finding one another. And so we get comfort from that. No one's here to tell us what we should be doing. We're here to support one another while we're watching this grow into who we are. And man, when I see how rapidly these changes are happening in everybody else, it just, my skin, I get goosebumps, because I sense this energy just keeps rising. And then, well,
Yes, and you sense the energy. That's amazing thing. I guess you really sense it. Laura,
yes.
when you mentioned that you spent 4 weeks on Mount Shasta, and we are going to come back to Telos, um, did you feel that that the vibration was rising in you and within the environment? Did you actually feel it and notice it, or was it something like just so gradual that you did not even notice it and you only remembered later on?
That's a really good question, because it took me to be, I was actually there for 5 weeks before I left. It was 4 weeks when I had my experience with Telos, and then I had to leave a week later, or I would have stayed longer. I wouldn't realize it. And just like you said, I think my vibration was already in a place where I was open to things bigger than myself. I was just going to be taken to a place where I was going to be bathed in it. And over that amount of time, it was going to tweak your vibration even higher, because you're in a high vibration place. And every day you go out there, you just raise to the next level. You don't have to talk to anybody. You don't have to say a word. By the end of the second week that I was there, I would get a benchmark for myself that I didn't realize, because the things you were asking me about how I thought I felt wouldn't come to me until then. In the second week, I had noticed this couple, probably my age. They had never been there before, but during the course of the week, we crossed paths hiking here and there. And the last day, this Friday, I had started out my day at this same place we all like to go, as high as you can drive. And I could hear them kind of saying their goodbyes to the mountain. And the husband had mentioned how energetic he felt. And that is the moment that I felt what he was talking about. And it occurred to me that over this 14 days I had been here, I had not taken one day in between to recover from the hike I did the day before. And I was going through significant elevation changes every day, hiking every day, all day long, and getting it up next day and doing it all over again. I wouldn't understand that there's something else, some palpable energy that when your boots are on the ground on the mountain, you pick up on it. I wish there was a better way I could tell you what that felt like. Get there, you'll find it for yourself. And the longer you're there, the deeper you get into that vibration.
I would just say, just don't worry about returning. Follow your intuition, your energy, and just stay in the place.
Right. Yes. That's how it worked for me.
Part of the bravery, or the, how would you say it in English? The
Courage.
courage.
Yeah. I can appreciate when I look at others, when this started going on with me, and I knew how much time I could devote during my day to a meditative place first, because without that, none of the rest of this would have manifested at all. But the time that I spend in research, looking for more validation of all these conditions I see, it took a while for all that to kind of sink in. Now, when I think of the time I have to do that, I don't have to worry about a family. I don't have to worry about the job that I used to have to hold down. And I don't worry about, the things I used to do with my friends. Have all those things kind of gone off to the side? Well, some of them, yes, but some of them I can see were intentionally lined up. So when it came time for me to focus on the things that I really wanted to focus on, if my intent was to understand this connection I have to spirit, source, God, whatever you want to call it, I believe it's there and I want to touch it. If it's there, that's what took me on the journey. You just have to let go of any predisposed notions you have before if you expect to learn anything new. And once you say, I never experienced that before, you got two choices. Stop saying either, first of all, yeah, that can't be true because I've never experienced it before, or maybe it's possible. Not just possible, I'm beginning to understand it's probable that these things are going on right now.
Lots of listeners said to mention that they are looking forward to it. They absolutely believe it.
It's coming. So I want to talk to them all because I want to pick up on the energies they're picking up on. I don't think that they're just responding to words that they've heard. I think that they've heard something and all of a sudden something resonated, something they felt resonated inside of them that they just know is true. And it transcends all of the words that are coming out. That's why people are seeking out. We're done waiting for the government to tell us about UAPs or UFOs. We see what that's going to produce. And even if I thought I believed that the government knew everything that they should know, I don't believe that they even know. I'll say this, in the interactions I've had with people over the last 4 years, I've also had some people that work within the government that found my WhatsApp number and reached out because they have been in scenarios where there's an awareness of all this going on, but they can't get answers from their superiors about what's really going on. And they're subject to the same internal human things that we're going through. So there's a lot of good people that work for the government that want to know the truth too. They just didn't know where to look for it. I didn't realize how many people were listening to my podcast a couple of years ago until they kind of, discriminately reached out just to kind of get a feel. And I know the first thing people want to find out, is this guy true? Is this authentic? Is he genuine? Or is this just a bunch of bullshit? And all I can respond with that is, I'm 70 years old. If I had my choice, I'd never talk about this again, because there's aspects of it that just people don't want to understand, so they ridicule it. The other part is it won't be much longer before we have to defend any of this stuff anymore.
I think it's happening already. We do not
Yes.
have to be considered as conspirational theorists anymore in many ways and being ridiculed.
Yeah. But this is the role that you and I and some of these others are going to be called upon to do. We're trying to, not trying, our guides are preparing us with that interpreter, whatever that vibrational thing we need to have first so that we can understand what they're trying to tell us. Then we can unpack all the downloads they send after that. And when I got the first few, to me, it said, I just want to understand this in a way that I can explain it to others, because I see down the road there's going to be a need for that. There was when I came across this stuff and no one could answer my questions. I know why a lot of us now are being seated here, so that we would be more prepared to have these conversations with them.
It is like you say that I feel that many of us who heard the invitation and follow it, that we are being prepared. It's not that we are somewhere in the final destination. We are on the path, on the journey, and we are still, as we go, we are being prepared for something.
Yeah.
And you are a great part of it, Lowell. I'm so happy to have you once again on the show. Thank you so much. And could you please tell us how long you were in Telos, how much time you spent there?
Oh, well, there was one last piece to this puzzle, and then I'll answer that question. At the end, when Alex and I returned to the staging area, there were only two questions I had. I hadn't really said much along the way because I wanted to listen and I wanted to see and just take it in. But I did have two questions. And the first one was, can I tell anybody about this? And he kind of laughed and said, we want you to tell everybody about this. We want them to know that we're here. This isn't a legend. And yes, we're real. We're just in a space that, although we occupy it, you're not in the space that we occupy at the same time. You are, because we helped you kind of get here right now. But that wasn't without your own vibration achieving this level in the first place. Now our job is to help everybody else get there. And the second question I had is, do I get to come back? And he said, yes, you'll get to return before the shift. Not exactly the date and time I was hoping he was going to give me, but yes, the door is open. I've had lots of people ask me, have I gone back there yet? And do I have still communicate? I still communicate with them this way. But in all honesty, if I was able to go somewhere again, it's been made clear to me that Telos isn't the only inner earth place. That I am aware of 10 inner earth cities, all Lemurian, some Atlantean energies and colonies. So there's over 120 of them in my awareness of what's on the planet already. So I'm eager to explore new places I hadn't been before. And of course, I'd love to go back to Telos. I didn't get to spend enough time there to really enjoy it the way I wished. And one day I will. But there's a lot of other places. And I think part of this exercise in helping people understand it is that although Telos and the Lemurians are a wonderful story, they're not the only ones. And the reason why this content is coming up now, if you recall, if you buy into the idea the Lemurian was a landmass and there was a problem and it sunk, yeah, we're not done with those catastrophes yet. Where did the beings on the surface go when those things were coming? They went underground. They found places in their own dimensions where they can reside, and they're just as physical as ours are. We just can't comprehend 4 versus 3, but they're there and they're just waiting. So there's a lot of places that we're going to be able to visit, and the mechanisms by which we get there and the amount of time it takes for us to go from here to there isn't going to be really anything that we can
Lowell, you are
comprehend.
extremely exciting people, because lots of people would love to experience similar things, get the courage and go. What would you advise to the people who would like to visit some of those places? Some go to Shasta, some to other places. What would you advise them how to prepare, how to sense where to go, how to prepare?
I have a few months after the Telos experience, somebody had asked me if I'd ever heard the name Sharula Dux. I had not. And he went on to tell me that she's a Lemurian princess. She is the daughter of King and Queen Ra and Ranamu. And back in the late 80s, Sharula came to the surface and spent time educating people about the Lemurians and Telos. She disappeared from what I can tell on what I could find about her, like in 2005, 2007. But then during that time that she was here, especially in the 90s, she was very active and moving around the country, in fact, around the world, telling people about Telos. Well, if you know who Dianne Robbins is, Dianne I met because she's an author and written 3 or 4 books on Inner Earth, Telos, Adama. Oh, she's connected to all of it, and they became friends. Well, during the time that Sharula was doing these presentations in 1993, I think it was one of her final presentations. Dianne was there and brought a tape deck and recorded this 2 hour presentation. Over time, somebody had found it and had chopped it up into 12, 10-minute pieces, thinking, I guess, that it would make it more digestible for somebody to listen to it. And so when I was led to it, I wasn't ready for the information. I listened to 1 or 2 of it, and I really didn't understand what I was hearing. Now, let's move to last summer. Somebody else moved into the Shasta area who has a connection with the Lemurians, one that's undeniable, and reached out and found Dianne. And Dianne, in return, told me about this other person. And so we started a dialogue. And in this is when this whole reunification with Sharula's information came back up. Because the only one here with permission to do anything would have been Dianne. It was her copyright on the tape. I said, would you mind if I took those 12 pieces, put them back together, and on top of her narration, because it's Sharula telling the story about the Lemurians and life in Telos, I'm going to take some of my inner earth images and I'll lay it over the top. So I took that, and it's just under 2 hours. It's on my YouTube channel. Go look for Sharula Dux. To me, here is a historical document of what it's like for life in Telos. You want to hear what family life is like? It's there. You want to hear what living conditions are like? It's there. And it's in Sharula's own voice. During the narration, she goes on to say that whenever this was, it was in 1993. She said in linear time, she was 268 years old while she was doing this. So you make what you want out of it. In addition to that, there were, when I started to find these other inner earth cities, I had started to look through this archive of all these inner earth pictures I had. And I could find subsets that made sense with Telos and Apellos, Posid. I had like these 3-minute clips with some music in the background that just illustrated what I saw in those areas from the books that I had read, wherever the source came from. And so those 10 3-minute clips are also there. So if somebody wants kind of an idea on what those realms feel like, that's also on my YouTube channel. I've heard people say the same thing about, they cried when they saw a few. Their goosebumps when they saw a couple others, because there were those that had that reaction with me. Look, I made those things for me. I took those images and made it in a way that when I saw this, oh, this inspired me that this place is true. And then I started to share them with others. And when they felt the same way, oh, okay, we're onto something here.
Yes, I saw some of the photographs on your website, and I felt so deeply connected to something, really.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
so at the end of asking those 2 questions with Alex, we were done. And the next thing that I knew, I was out sitting in that spot where I'd been leaning up against a rock before that. I would then make my way back to the car, and I was in a daze. I don't know how long it took me to get back there. I couldn't even remember how I got back there until there's a walkway right before coming off the paths before the parking spot. And when I got to that area, that's when I started looking around at all these other people, all these other cars, thinking, none of you have any idea where I just was. And by the time I got back to the car, well, I finally plugged my phone back in, and so I could get it to fire up. Looked at where I was, took another picture so I'd have a timestamp. I was in that space for about, according to the timestamps of the picture I took before I left the car, and when I got back, was like 2 hours and 20 minutes or so. It felt like I was there for hours. Yes.
Wow. Wow.
Yes.
That is just so amazing. And Laura, I know you said you would mention something about the Earth history, at least. That's something that comes to your mind. That's something we would really like to hear.
Oh, well, we need to do that on another podcast then, because I could spend a good hour. I'll leave you with this, because there was a wonderful resource that I found. And I'll think of the woman's name, Judith Kusel. She's South African. Over her lifetime, she had been a librarian and kind of an archaeologist. And so, she put all those things together. She wrote a book, and had written several, but this one struck a nerve with me. It was Why I Was Born in Africa. And it goes through the early phases of Earth's development and build out, how it was done, what decisions were made. That's where I come up with the idea that this whole Earth thing was an experiment. That when this orb, which was a seventh dimensional orb to begin with, and it wasn't like Earth didn't have interstellar visitors in the past. They stopped here for whatever resources they needed, but it wasn't life-sustaining at the time. Until Marduk was no longer capable of supporting life in this solar system, Earth became level 2. Now from there, that's when the Galactic Federation decided they were going to build out the mantle. So who did they invite first? The Pleiadians, because they're master botanists in the planet, in the galaxy. And when they finished their work, they stepped back and looked at this. And if you want to understand what Eden was like, here it is, undisturbed by anything else before it. And when the scientists kind of stepped back and looked at what they'd created, that's when they petitioned the Federation to colonize here, brought their families. Yeah, that coincided with the time when the Lyrians had lost their planet and had been, kind of continuing their evolution on Sirius. Well, when they heard about this opportunity on Earth, they also petitioned to be able to come here and colonize. Now you had the Pleiadians who understood botany, understood grid work, and had that capability. Here come master architects, master builders who were behemoth. I can only imagine what they've built that's still under the earth and the sand that we have not found, that they put here already. But one day we will, because it's here. So through that collaboration, the earth built out, and it continued to get through this idea to colonize. Now, what I neglected to say at the beginning of this is when that request to petition to colonize here took place, the Federation explained Earth was an experiment. Humanity is part of the experiment, but Earth is also going through a process. It's an experiment. And anyone that comes here understands we're going through third dimensional lessons in this space so that Earth can move through her own evolution of all. So move through sequences in Avalon, Lemuria, Atlantis, and Egypt. And each one of those is another whole subset of understanding what took place during those civilizations. But some of us have had enough incarnations here where I had an awareness of each one of those levels. And then when I was seeking out what I thought my starseed roots were going to be, because I always kind of resonated with Pleiadians, I think that there's something to that. But there were other things that had drawn my attention galactically as well. Rigel in the Orion Belt was one. I'm trying to remember the name of the orange blinking planet. Antares and Vega. These are all places in Sirius that I had spent time, had an awareness of.
Do you think, Laura, that because you mentioned, and I heard it in other instances, that the Earth was a seven-dimensional being first.
Yes,
So there was some
yes,
kind of fall. That fall was a frequency fall, obviously.
yes, yes.
Did it have to do with the arrival of the, let's say, not very nice races to colonize it here, or was it maybe to do with the Atlanteans, sinking
Yes.
their consciousness?
It's my understanding that it happened on the Atlanteans' watch, and that whatever, the Atlanteans had reached fifth dimensional awareness, which is nothing to sneeze at. And the technology that they had advantage of, undisputed. What they wanted was what the Lemurians had at their seventh dimensional level of awareness. It's my understanding Atlantean scientists had amazing technologies. And at the outset of this exchange, Lemurians were androgynous seventh dimensional beings. They were a combination of perfectly balanced masculine and feminine energies. And it was the Atlanteans who were more interested in the physical side of the planet. The Lemurians were interested in the metaphysical side and advancing the spiritual side. The Atlanteans wanted to play out this physical part some more. And so the way it was put to me is that these scientists had convinced the Lemurians that they couldn't have been all that divine if they didn't understand the nature of a union between a male and a female, and talk them into this separation.
Wow.
And what ends up happening is those seventh dimensional beings are no longer seventh dimensional, don't vibrate at that level. They're fifth dimensional like the rest of you. And so you just locked yourself off from advancing into those higher realms because you drag them into your own frequency. Now, what other causes that created? Earth had lived on a seventh dimensional electromagnetic grid. It's useless now. The Atlanteans can't maintain it because they don't have the technology nor the intelligence to maintain it. So they had to create another fifth dimensional grid. Believe me, technologically, it's advanced, but it isn't what we used to have. And so a few years ago, that was what occurred to me, that we spend so much time thinking we're moving from third to fifth dimension. Guys, our target is to head back to seventh dimensional awareness and choose if we wish to express lower physical dimensional expressions.
Which would be
That's what our target
one.
is.
Yes.
Yes.
And one more question also regarding, you mentioned that there are dimensional states on Earth. Did you say that? Like
9, just
different
like any other place. Yes, there are
here on
9 that
Earth?
we have communication with. These are the entities that watch over the earth. Each dimension has its own council that oversees its development. And then there is a council that oversees, that galactic federation that oversees the benefit of Earth at her level. But there are different aspects of every dimension that are being represented here on Earth, and she supports 9th dimension all the way here.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Before we close up, aware of your time, this is so fascinating. I want to ask you 2 questions. Will you come back again sometime?
Yes. Yes. Look, I am delighted that you wish to help get information that I think is important for everybody to know. This wasn't limited to me. The information I know resonates, in my opinion, with every human being that's here. And I thought it was going to be my job to help everybody understand that. What I learned along the way is that regardless of what I think
You have your
everybody should
tribe.
know, they're not ready. There are a lot of people that aren't ready. And again, it doesn't make them bad people. I can't account for their soul contract and the lessons that they signed up for. And again, I respect their journey because I want to see who they're going to grow up to be and whatever they master, because it's not me. I want to see what they do. I'm here to support that.
That's fantastic. And one more thing is synchronicity, downloads. We had a few questions on this. People feel that they have downloads, and I just loved it the way you had expressed it. You said they just throw it at you, these downloads. People see numbers. So it's obviously got more intense over
There
the
are lots of synchronicities. When you talk about numbers, in my mind, here's the expression on every time higher aspects can get in touch with us, they're going to take every opportunity to do that. They're going to use magical ways. So you're going to see 1111 a lot. You're going to see 444, 333. You're going to see repeating numbers. And then you're going to start to hear songs that just belong in this place where they should. You're going to hear somebody utter a phrase that it came at the right time and open up a line of thinking that you are so in tune with, but you don't know where it came from. That happens more and more. I came to terms with the downloads I was receiving because I started to hear, whatever doctors want to call tinnitus. Well, I never got it in both ears at the same time. I was guided to understand when I was getting these frequency sounds in my left ear, spiritual downloads. And at first got a lot of those. This, my right ear, is what I understood where your physical changes came along. And when this was so busy for months and months and months, I was waiting, okay, what happens over here? Because nothing's going on. Well, down the road is when this starts to kick in. And now this awareness that the changes that were taking place at a cellular level to accommodate this higher light and these greater frequencies, that's starting to kick in now too. And I can almost feel the changes taking place in me. I account for it's why I can feel these energetic things I can describe to people. That's how I get in touch with it. But I'm a human like the rest of you. You're all capable of getting in touch with this same sensation.
Thank you. Thank you for this statement, and for everyone that they should realize their own value, how capable they are of developing
Yes.
their abilities, and they're not on their own because they have help. And I feel really great presence with you. And you know what is amazing? That we are actually talking across the ocean, across vast distance, and we have no lag.
Right.
That is just amazing. This is one of the technologies that we really appreciate at this time.
Yes. For now, and we need to take advantage of it quickly because these solar phenomena we're talking about, when that hits this 3D Earth, it's going to take out infrastructure.
Yeah.
And we're not going to be able to communicate like this for a while. So I don't know what's going on, and I'm not going to spend too much time dwelling on it, or that's where my attention would go. In the meantime, we're going to communicate this message with as
Yes.
many people as we can while we can.
All right, Lowell. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. For us, it's
Thank
good
you for
evening.
inviting me.
And how to say it? Bye-bye from Europe, from all of us with our heart. We really love you, and we should love ourselves, and we should spread this message and the legacy of Lowell. And we're looking forward to you coming back, Lowell, again.
Until the next time. Thank
Until
you.
the next time, thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.